Cool. Hello there, everyone. Welcome. I'm just going to take a few minutes to let everyone come in and get settled and get sorted out. I'm going to wait to get some of the chat information to be sent through to me so I can see the questions that are going to come in. So just we'll probably take 2 or 3 minutes before we get going. So get ready, grab a drink, go to the loo if you need to do that, and get ready for the Adam Audio and Bax webinar on home acoustics and monitoring for mixing. My name's Jane. How you doing? Let's see what we've got here. Just going to check out my YouTube page. Let's see. See where we're at. Nothing coming in just yet. We'll wait on a few minutes. What have we got here? Nothing just yet. Have to remain patient and wait for the delay in the stream. That's all good. So I really just want, before kind of diving in, I really want to make sure that everyone's out there, and that really importantly that I have access to the chat, because I want this this webinar today to be interactive, and I really encourage you to ask me questions. And so I need to see, I've got to see all the chat. So I think Martin's just sent that through to me now. So just give me a sec and I'm going to check it out. Cool. Let's make sure that this is muted though, because I don't want to be hearing myself. Now, let's see if we got I'd really love someone to post, hey, tell me your name, where are you coming, where are you in the world? I imagine you're all in the Netherlands. Where are you in the Netherlands? Let me just get this other, can't see my YouTube chat yet. Maybe we'll give that a bit of a refresh. What have we got? Okay, cool, looking good. So let's see. Hey, Fried Vilska is there. Ethan, hi from Wales, nice one. Timothy from London, yay, cool, great to see you all there. Now I'm going to try and pop out this chat so I can get it going. Meadow, hey Meadow, how are you? Pop that chat out, good, got that one out. Because I can see my face on this and that's really weird. Now I haven't, I want to see people from Facebook. Have I got some Facebook people commenting? One comment, let's check it out. Jay Murphy. Hello, Jay. How are you? What's up? Nice to see you, mate. Great. Okay, cool. I'm glad that we're online. Now, I've just got to set this up a little bit so that I can see this while we're going to do the webinar. I've got Jay there. Tuna. Hey, Tuna. Tuna Han. Is that Tuna your real name, or is that a nickname? Okay, cool. So let me close out my email so that doesn't annoy me. We've got someone from Hamburg. We've got people from France. Yay, wow, loads of people. Awesome. Someone from India. Hello, love India. Where are you from in India? I had really delicious Indian food yesterday. South Indian, Tamil food, yummy. Someone from Berlin, people from Barcelona. Amazing, cool, cool, cool. All right. So just a few seconds more and I'm going to keep on moving. So let me see here. So thanks everyone, just bear with me for a sec. Cool, okay, so well, hang on, I need to see the YouTube chat a bit better. All right. Cool, okay. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for all tuning in, and I'm really excited to present this webinar on behalf of Adam Audio. I'm here in Adam HQ and partnering with Bax, really happy to give this webinar. This is actually the last webinar in my summer series of webinar mania. It's been I just saw some comments there from Jay. You were under the impression that Jennifer Aniston. Sorry, mate, I'm not Jennifer Aniston. Unfortunately, you'll have to just deal with me. That's all you got. So really happy to bring this webinar to you, and I'm super excited that people are interested in home acoustics and monitoring for mixing. You're all geeks like me, I imagine. Really cool to have you here. So before I get going, let me just give you a bit of an idea about what's going to be happening. Today, I mean, it's mainly a talk. Obviously, I've got a PowerPoint presentation you can see just there, wherever it is. And I'm going to kind of talk through, first of all, we're going to talk about monitors, speakers, some of you might call them, and to give you more understanding about what it is that's in a speaker to help you to be empowered to make the right decisions for the right monitor that is going to work for you in your applications. Obviously, I'm representing Adam Audio, so I'm also going to give a few big ups to Adam Audio. I'm going to, through talking about what the components of monitors are, I'm also going to, talk a bit about why I think Adam monitors are great. And then we're also going to move on to, and I'm going to really break down all the different parts and how they help for giving you the higher quality audio that you search for. Please, any questions that you have throughout, please throw them in the chat. I've got Facebook and YouTube here. Be a little patient with me because I'm monitoring this all myself, so I'm going to have to kind of move between the two. I just like to throw out straight away, this is a good vibes only space, so please no trolls, no negative vibes. We're just all here to have fun and to learn, and so yes, I hope everyone's here in that spirit. So the second part, we're going to be looking at a little bit of home acoustics and things, guides about how you can fix your room so you can get better audio, and how you can place your monitors. Now, I do have to say, like a disclaimer, I'm not an acoustician and I'm not here to try and be one. I am a producer, and I imagine that you all out there are producers and mixers and different types of songwriters. So I come at it from this angle, so I've had to figure this stuff out for myself in my studios throughout the years. And since I've come on board with Adam, I've obviously got a huge amount more information about the details of speakers and things like that. So these things combined, I'm hopeful that this is going to be useful for you to feel more kind of empowered, because I think that I think a lot of people think that acoustics and monitoring is like a dark art, and it's really super complex. You have to know physics, and it's impossible unless you have a degree or a Bachelor of Science or something. I mean, certainly that can be the case, and that you can really go down the wormhole with this stuff. But I really think that there's some few simple tips that you can take with you that can really empower you to make some simple improvements. And also, it doesn't have to cost that much money, which I think is also a really important thing to note. Okay, so let's just check in, see if there's any more comments. See what we got. All right, cool. So everyone's there. Nice one. So I'm going to ask you if you have a specific question. If you came here with a question, please put it in the chat now, and then I can have a look at them and I can see if I've already got it to answer, and see if I can answer you and help you out with that, or if not, I can put it later in the session. Okay, so any questions, throw them in. Please go for it. All right, let's do this then. I'm going to actually change this. I might change this to. Oh no, we'll just get going. Okay. So yes, I'm the product specialist for Adam Audio. Here's my email. If you have any questions about Adam products or whatever, there's my email. You can get at me on that one. A little bit further about me. I'm also, so as I said, a producer and a mixer. I work freelance in Berlin. I've worked in lots of studios. I'm from Australia, if you didn't realize already. I've worked in lots of studios in Australia, commercial studios. I'm a big fan of analog mixing, and since I've been in Berlin, I've done lots of different work in the studios here. Worked in UK at Rack Studios, and kind of different places. Basically, wherever I can get access to studios, it's my happy place. So, the other aspect is that I have kind of come through many years of having home studios, and I've developed my studios myself. So, if you're interested, you can check out my pet project, which is my band Evol. We're on Spotify. Check it out. We just have a new album that we released, and you can see some of my work. So this is something that we co-wrote, and I produced, and I mixed it as well. So you can check out my work and see what you think. Okay. So today's session, actually, I'm going to make this big. It's a little bit small there. Now I'm just seeing a few questions. Okay, I'm going to come back to those. And great questions there. Thanks a lot for that. Okay, so let's make this big and let's get into it for real now. Okay, so as I said, there's going to be a fair bit of me talking in the start, and I'm going to take breaks and check in on your questions, okay? So ask the questions as we go so you don't forget, and then I'll see them there and then we can come back to them. Okay, so as I said today, part one is monitoring. I'm going to answer the question, hopefully for you, what monitor speaker is right for me? What are the components in a speaker? And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what's special about Adam speakers. Then part two, we're looking at optimizing monitors in your room, as I said. So, the question about where do I put my monitors? What about acoustic treatment? What kinds of acoustic treatment can we do? Simple stuff. And what about EQ correction? So I'm going to look into that. Okay. So which monitor is right for me? So the first thing I need to say from the get-go is that the perfect monitor does not exist. Okay, so there's lots of factors that you need to think about. The most important factor to understand about a monitor is that it exists inside space, i.e. a room. Okay, so the monitor and the room are always going to be working together. You can have the most expensive, amazing, perfect monitor in the world, and if you're in a really bad room, it's not, it's going to be problematic for you. Obviously, we have things like near-field monitoring, and that does a big job of removing the room because you get that first reflection straight away. But still, we're still in a room and the room is going to impact us, okay? So I think that's the first important thing to understand, is that good sound for mixing is a combination of correct monitor choice and good monitor choice. And then the other aspect, which is either if you have getting the right room or adapting the room that you are dealt with to make it the best that you can, okay? Cool. So there's quite a few things. If you're thinking about, we're just going to focus about monitoring now. If you're thinking about to purchase a monitor, there's a lot of decisions to make. So, and it can be really confusing. And most people don't have a clue really about the differences. And there's a lot of, people in the industry, we go, oh, I like this, oh, I like that. And maybe people don't think too much about why they like it. At the end of the day, taste rules, and that's totally fine. But let's break it down. So these are the decisions. Active or passive, near field, midfield, or mains. Do I want a sub or no sub? Am I into an analog processing or DSP processing? And what even is the difference between that? And do I want or need EQ on board, as many of the speakers now have? Okay, so these are the things that you need to think about. Then, of course, you need to start thinking about the brand that you like, maybe, if that's your vibe. So here, just for some people that might not know anything about it, again, I don't know who I've got here, so I'm trying to kind of like bring everyone in. So some of you might know some of this stuff, and some of you might not. Okay, so we've got here in the top left the famous Yamaha NS10s. That's a near-field monitor. Down the bottom, we have an older, I'm kind of going through the archives here with some of our Adam speakers. This is one of our older Adam monitors. I think that was the first one that I might have had. I've been using Adam for about 15 years. So then we have up in the middle, we have just some random, I can't remember where I got that. It's like online, it's probably plagiarized. Mains speakers, and then we have near-field monitors down the bottom. And then down on the bottom right-hand side, we have some S5Hs from Adam, which are being used as mains monitors in that studio. Okay. So let's think about the components of a speaker. So when you get to buying your speaker, you need to think about what are the different components. So we have, and again, this might seem obvious, but maybe you've never thought about it. So when you're buying a speaker, you want to think about the amplifier. You also need to think about the housing or the cabinet. You want to know about the connection and the driver. So when we think about drivers can be confusing. People don't understand what that is. I mean, essentially, driver are the different speaker components that we have. So if you have a tweeter and a cone, they will be two drivers, okay? And the driver is the idea that's driving or pushing out a sound at different places in the audio spectrum. So I've said here we've got the common, you probably know them by these terminology. So a woofer is a low frequency driver, the tweeter is a high frequency driver, and then we have a mid-range driver. I don't think a mid-range driver's got a special nickname. Does anyone know? Is a mid-range called a MIDI or something? Or I don't know. Let me know if that's the case. Okay, so we can have, three-way speakers, which we would have a tweeter, a woofer, and a mid-range driver. Then, of course, we have to have a filter because these three drivers will be pushing out sound across the frequency range, and they would have crossover. They would have points where the sound is coming over at the same frequency, the same part of the frequency band. So we need to decide, or the engineers at Adam or who wherever need to decide where the optimal crossover point is. To use the most high fidelity aspects of that driver in the frequency range that it works best in. Okay. So here we are. For those of you that are visual people, up the top we have the tweeter, in the middle we have the mid-range driver, and at the bottom is the woofer. Now, the other thing, this is the Adam S3V. Now, another thing I just wanted to point out here, so you can see with the S3V, maybe I will talk about this later. Actually, I was just going to talk about the housing in the cabinet because a lot of people don't think about that, but I think it's very, very important. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so active or passive. So we understand the different drivers that we have. Now we need to think about, do we want an active speaker or a passive speaker? What's the difference between the two? That's the question. So a lot of people think that the difference between a passive and active monitor is that active is the one that comes in with a built-in amplifier inside the cabinet housing, and then the passive, it needs to have an external amplifier. Okay, so that is part of the story, but if you're going to get really geeky about it, like I like to, enter a schematic. What the actual truth of the matter is the stage where the crossover goes, at what point the crossover goes, okay? So with passive, the amplification comes before the crossover. And with active, the amplification comes after the crossover. So I'm not going to go too deep into thinking about that. But thinking about, or you can think about it in terms of mixing, maybe similar kind of thing. So if you're mixing, are you EQing before you're compressing? Even though that's a little bit misleading. But thinking about the placement in the circuit, this is the truth of active and passive. Okay, so that's maybe a bit of new information for you. I didn't know that until a couple of years ago. So then the question is, okay, why do I care about that? What does that mean to me? So, I mean, I think that to bring it back, and again, what the point of this talk is about you being more empowered for yourself, is that, I mean, active, obviously it's more convenient because it's all contained in one unit. And then passive also can end up being more expensive because you have to buy separate amps. Something that I'm really noticing at the moment, because I'm, around monitors and speakers a lot, is that one of the disadvantages of active is that they get bloody heavy because you've got the amplifier, plus you've got all the drivers and everything in one unit, plus the housing, and you've got to be able to lug it around. So, again, thinking about all of these decisions that you need to make that is going to be the right decision for you is really important. One other thing I think is the last thing to say about active versus passive is this quote that I have down here, and I forgot to credit the person, but this is not me. So whoever said that, I'm not plagiarizing. The main benefit for active monitors is that it guarantees that the amps have been conceived and have been adjusted or tuned to match the speakers perfectly. And I think that to me is the biggest kind of selling point for active speakers, in my opinion, is that I know that they've been crafted and engineered and tuned perfectly. So, okay. All right. So the next thing then to think about is amplification. What's a different type of amplification that we have in speakers? So the two most common ones are class D and class A or B, A/B. Now, does anyone know what the hell those classes mean? Like, a lot of people don't know what that means when they look at the specs when they're going to buy some speakers. So someone told me this relatively recently, and I don't know if it's true or not, but class, you could say D for digital and A for analog. I don't know if that's the official class of like reason for why it's called class D, but anyway, that's how I remember it, okay? So D amps are digital. And an example of this is in the Adam S series. We use digital with ICE, specifically the ICE brand power amplifiers, and they're on our low and our mid-range drivers. Also in the top range, which is the S5V and H, the tweeter is also using a D amp. Now, what's the benefit of these? Well, the idea about Class D is that they are really efficient. And I have a number here, so they're 90% more efficient than Class A or B. So they're not wasting energy. In addition to that, they're more robust and they last longer. The idea is that there's a really good distortion-free, high-quality audio. But then you go, cool, well, let's use those. They're better. Why would we use A at all? And the reason is that they're expensive. And when we're thinking about putting together a speaker, things like price point are, of course, important because people need to be able to afford it and buy it. Now, over time, Class D amps are kind of coming down in price and things are changing. But it is, of course, these decisions are all part of it. Now, and as I said here, so Class A is the analog, whatever. So the benefits for them is that obviously in the price range that we're kind of working with, they offer, they offer more bandwidth within, kind of better response in the particular frequency range that they're going to work at. So here, for example, the tonal advantages when applying high frequencies. So we use them a lot for our tweeters because we get a better quality, a higher fidelity output of audio within the price point for the speakers. So, for example, in the AX series, we're using the AB amplifiers. And in fact, Adam actually developed their own amp, so they can optimize it for the S-Art tweeter, which is in the S series up until the S5s, I believe. Okay. Now, I'm just going to take a little pause there because I know this is quite heavy information and it's easy to get overwhelmed. So I'm going to check in on some chat. Hang on, where's my... All right. Now, I've just thought of a really great idea here. I'm going to bring the chat into my window. Can you all see that? Let's check it out. Cool. Okay, so what have we got here? We've got, let's see, question, how do you place bass traps, three-way speakers? Okay, so is it the case that three-way speakers, even though usually more expensive, are better than two-way speakers of a similar price range, of course? Okay, Bernard, this is a really good question. And, again, a lot of what I'm going to say today is my opinion based on, a combination of my work at Adam and my experience. Now, as my understanding is that ultimately, like, the best situation is that you would have one driver. So one single driver, because as soon as you start to have to roll off and have crossovers, as soon as you introduce filters, you're introducing subtle phase, which means time changes or adjustments, which is going to be less ideal. Really subtle phase shifts, which, what does phase do? It reduces clarity ultimately. Okay, so I think the question of whether three-way speakers are better than two-way speakers, I think that it really is, for example, okay, the S2Vs and the S3Vs. The difference, there's a whole range of differences around. I wouldn't ever say that a 3 is better than a 2, but I think that when you start to work into midfield monitors rather than near field, the the opportunity, because you've got more space, so the spread that you would get when you the 3 different drivers, if they're going to be up close, they'll be disparate, right? So when they're further away from midfield, I would probably prefer a 3-way, but for the near field, I would prefer 2 drivers. So again, I'm not here to tell you what is right or wrong. It's your decision, right? No one's going to tell you there's one thing's better than the other, but I think for different applications, different speakers different combinations work best. So I hope that answered your question somewhat. Okay. Okay, so Dennis is saying here, I want to buy the A7Xs, but I'm not sure if I can mix on them properly because they don't go low enough. So I would suggest that with the A7Xs, if you're really in the low frequency range, I would match it with a sub. Yep. Okay. And the benefit of the sub is that if you're doing lots and lots of bass work and you really want to be able to hear what's going on, I would attach a sub. That would be my guidance. The question is so 7x3. So you don't need a massive sub. It'd be something like the 10 or the 12, certainly not a 15. Probably the 10-inch sub would be enough. So someone said, would the A8Xs be a better solution? Yeah, I mean, maybe they would be. I mean, again, I think that the situation for you would be to go in and listen in your local store and feel it out for yourself. The key here is like you have to be listening in for what are you listening in for? Okay, so you need to be listening in for the clarity in the low end. So listen into the A8Xs, and then listen into the A7Xs with the sub attached as well. I think if you don't want to go down the sub path, then I would absolutely suggest the A8X. Yep. Okay. So here, okay, sorry, Dennis, I'm just sticking with Dennis. Sorry for everyone else's questions. I will get to them. Now, someone's saying here that the A8Xs have a better low end, but the mids aren't as clear. Yeah, okay, so this is what I said, is that there's always a trade-off. So if you want to have those clear mids, the A7Xs is going to be, the mid range is really, really clear, and even into the low frequencies. And then you want to introduce a sub so you can have a devoted sub for those low frequencies. If you're concerned about the lack of clarity in the mid range, then I would go down to the sub. Okay, so that would be my advice. Okay, now there's a few questions about placement. Rudy is asking questions. They're great questions, and I'm going to come back to those. Oh, cool. Okay, someone's saying here, all you need is ears, giving more information about Class A and Class D. Thank you so much for that. Really cool. Cool. More questions about subs. Yeah, lots of people are interested in subs these days, I find. Cool. Okay. Okay, we're going to get to that placement stuff later. All right, thanks for that. Now I'm going to quick check into Facebook. What do we got going on here? Best cable to use for Adam. So someone's saying, Emmanuel, hey Emmanuel, is saying, what's the best cable to use for the Adam active monitor? Oh God, I don't know how to answer that question. I'm really sorry. I'm not an expert in cables. Maybe you need to speak to the Bax people, speak to your local dealer, and they will really be able to help you out with that. Okay, so question about, Jay, hey Jay, sorry, I should put this up on the page. Let me do that. When comparing the T5V and the A5X, on paper the T5V seems to have a much wider frequency, is the budget, Okay, so this is a good question. I'm going to answer this one. Okay, so why would you choose the A series over the T series, so the AX series over the T series? Now, this is an important distinction to make, is that Adam, we have 3 levels of monitors that are for 3 kind of different stages of a producer's development. So the T series is for the entry level producer who's just kind of starting out. The AX series is kind of, we call it like aspiring or developing producer. And then we have the S series, which is the professional series. So with the T series, they're all made with the same engineering and design concept. If we start with the S series is, you know, the best of everything, the highest quality drivers and the tweeters and handmade. So the tweeters are handmade in the S series and the AX series here, actually downstairs across the road. With now the difference with the T series is that they're made in China, and the housing of the speaker, the cabinet, is not made of the same of wood. And they're also, the difference between the tweeter across the 3 levels is that, so the S series tweeter is the level of divergence from the optimum frequency response is very small. I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, I'm sorry. Then in the AX, there's a little bit more of a window. So when we're testing the tweeters, we have those that pass the test, they get to the S. Then we have those with a slightly wider range. They can get into the AX series. And then we have those that don't pass, and then they need to be worked on and fixed until they can be tested again. The T series don't get tested. They're manufactured in China, okay? So this is the difference right there. Now, the difference in terms of hearing them, now, again, I would encourage you should go to your store and you need to listen for yourself, like really. The difference as I experience it and what I recommend for people is that if you're a producer, you can produce with the T series, no problem. Like, they're amazing. I have T series at home in my home studio, and I use AX and S series in my actual like mixing studio. So what I would say, producing is totally fine. When you get to a point when you're mixing, the T series lacks the detail in the high frequency that the AX and the S series is going to have. So I wouldn't recommend mixing with the T5V. If you're a professional mixer, you know, if you're for real going to be doing professional, then I think it's time for you to invest in the AX series. Okay, so hopefully that's cleared some of that stuff up for you a little bit. Jay's joking here, and the ones that fail get sold to Rocket. No, we're not gonna shade out other brands. It's all love here today. All right, okay, so let's get back to the programming. I'm going to go small again, and we'll carry on. All right, and let's go big. Okay, so I'm going to move forward a little bit because I want to get into the acoustics, because I think that's where lots of the questions are. Okay, I do want to talk about tweeters. So the tweeter question is cone, ribbon, or metal. So a lot of people don't really kind of think about that so much, I guess, but I think it is a really important thing for you to choose and know why you're choosing it. This is a quote that I took from a Vintage King blog, so I'm going to read it out. Handling the high frequency side of things, tweeters come in many different forms, but there are 3 definitive types predominantly used in studios: soft, dome, ribbon, and metal. All 3 bring different elements to the table. Soft dome is thought to be more manageable for long sessions. Ribbon offers a larger area of frequency that allows for making easier decisions, and metal, tends to be more detailed. Okay, so that's someone else giving their opinion of it. I'm obviously biased because as I said, I use Adam myself, and I also work for Adam. So I just wanted to put that quote in there, and you can see where it's at. So I have here, actually, I'm going to just go small again. One sec. Okay, can you see that? So I've got the component parts of this is our tweeter. See it there? And here is kind of the casing. And this is the tweeter. It's all ribboned up, as it were. And then this is what it looks like before it gets turned into that, which I think is pretty cool. Okay, so I've been downstairs in the warehouse, and people are folding these up expertly, and they're handmade and put in this final configuration. So I think that's pretty cool. So I thought you might like to all see that. Cool. Okay. So hang on. So as I said, we use ribbon tweeters at Adam, the pleated diaphragm. The idea about it is that you get it's like 4 times the amount of surface area. And the idea is that it's increasing the air loading. So that means that it doesn't need to work quite as hard to push out the same amount of energy. And according to us, the logic of ribbon tweeters is that it equals the driver is not working as hard, and so that equals less distortion. And also with the way that the ribbon tweeter is, the idea is that you get more dispersion as well. So that's deconstructing the ribbon tweeter. Now, for you to think about, okay, which tweeter is right for me, I think that you really do have to go with your gut on this and listen to things. If you can't hear the difference, this is my opinion, okay? So for me, I feel like that the cone tweeters smear the high frequencies a bit too much for me, and I find that metal a little bit too harsh. Ribbon tweeters, in my opinion, are neutral and transparent. So I really want the detail for the high frequencies. Detail for the high frequencies for me is really important for transients, right? So I'm trying to hear all those details. I think that, and also, like, obviously I'm being biased here, but as I said, I've used Adam monitors for 15 years and I've only been working for Adam for like 2. Okay. So it is my actual opinion. It's not just the Adam thing. So, but there's also a rumor that goes around that people say ribbon tweeters equal ear fatigue. Now, I'm here to say that I think that is false. The thing that's going to give you ear fatigue is if you listen at levels that are too loud. That's it, right? So if you know your monitoring level, and 85 dB for 2 hours is a level that you can work out without creating ear damage. If you work for longer than 2 hours at 85 dB or more, you're doing damage and you're going to have ear fatigue. It doesn't matter what speaker. Okay, so that's important. But as I said, in my opinion, the ribbon takes a quarter of amount of power, so it's not working as much. There's less air pressure pushing, so it's like fatiguing me less. Anyway, that's my opinion. So I just want to say here is that, like, I've given you my opinion. I've given you obviously information about the Adam tweeters, and I do encourage you to go and listen, and you can make your own mind up ultimately about what works for you. All right. Now, the next thing is to think about mid, near, or far. Now, we're going to think about this when we're going into room acoustics. And really, so here's a few mid, near, or far setups here. The simple answer is, how big is your room? Okay, so where do you want to place the monitor in relation to your listening position? So if your room is only like 5 meters or something, you're not going to use a mid-field monitor because you don't have the size, right? So near field is the go for you. Okay, so thinking about that I think that's the important consideration to realize, when should you be using mid-field monitors? Well, it's when you get a bigger room. All right. So I think I've said enough about Adam monitors. I'm just going to move through this section, but I do just want to bring to your attention these slides here. The tweeter slide. There's information about our mid-range driver. There's also information about our bass driver. There's information about the magnet assembly that we have in the monitors. There's also waveguide information. There's also information about the cabinet and the bass reflex system. That's super important. I think it's an important, really beneficial aspect of the Adam design. So I'm not going to talk about these now because we're not going to have time. But the good news is all of this information that I just went through is taken from the website, and you can log on there and have a read for yourself to get more information. So I really encourage you to do that so you get all that info. Okay, and then as I said before, I've already kind of said this, but I'll summarize it again, is when you're thinking about which speaker to get, the T series, the AX series, or the S series, it's thinking about what level, realistically, what level are you in your career? What kind of work are you doing? Okay, so if we go for the T series is recommended for people that are just starting out. You're mainly kind of getting your tracks to demo level, or you're working on production and you're getting it mixed somewhere else. Maybe your room is untreated. You haven't thought about that far yet. And your main work is for production or songwriting and creative aspects. You're not wanting to be a mix engineer or a mastering engineer. Okay, T series is so fine for you. Then we have our AX series, and we call this the aspiring level. So with the, you will be producing in a home or a studio setting. So it could be a room in your house that's converted to a studio, or a basement, or whatever. Also you have your own studio elsewhere. I know lots of producers that have used AX series for years. I use AX series for like 10 years. And you might also be starting to do some mixing as well. I think by the time that you're going to invest in AX series monitors, to get you thinking about getting the most out of the sound. So for me, it's time then to start thinking about some acoustic treatment as well. So as I said, you might be doing some mixing with the AX series, but I wouldn't imagine that you'd be mastering. Then we have the S series, which is our professional series. And for the S series, obviously you're working as a professional mixer. Your income is derived from working as a producer, a mix engineer, or a mastering engineer. To be investing the significant amount of money to work with S series, you would be really doing yourself a disservice if you didn't also invest financially in optimizing your room, your acoustic treatment in your room. Okay. So now the final thing to say to this is, as I said before, I've talked a lot about listening. Mixing is about listening. So when you're going to be choosing your speakers, you should be listening then. And, I think that it's really important for you to have a plan, like know what am I listening for, because that's the other thing is like, okay, so I can listen, but like to what? So there's a few tips I want to give you. I've put a list here of 4 big things that you want to be listening to. Number 1 is the frequency response, obviously. So is it getting the high, when you up high, you're getting the sounding good to you, and then how low is it getting? Thinking about headroom. So, when you start to push the SPL a little bit, you shouldn't be hearing any distortion. It should be feeling really that there's lots of headroom still. You also, when we're thinking about the frequency response, the clarity and the detail is really important. So a few people have already said that, the detail in the mid-range. Okay, so really thinking about the detail there. And also another really important one is the depth or the spatial experience, particularly for mixers. You want to really be able to, which comes into clarity and detail as well, but really thinking about the clarity and detail, not just in the frequency spectrum, but also in the depth perception arena, which is that kind of front to back situation. And the final thing to say about this is create a reference list. And there's lots of really good reference lists. I know on Tidal, they've got like sound testing headphone lists and testing monitor lists. So you can find some, or even Google best songs for testing out monitors. Like check it out. There's lots of really good stuff out there, and build your own list based on your genre and based on the desires that you have. All right. So the final thing to say, I think I've kind of said everything here. So I think that, looking at the graphs and understanding the graphs, of course, is important. This is probably my final thing to say, okay? So do your research and learn about the components in whatever you're going to purchase. We've already done some research together today. Then I think it's really important for you to consider what fits you, your style, your vibe, your room, your genre, whatever it might be. Please make sure that you listen to the speakers in a controlled environment, in a listening room, in a shop or whatever. And if you're going to make a really big investment, you might be able to use the speakers actually in your studio. Now, this is something that we do at Adam. If you're interested in purchasing S3V, for example, we can arrange for them to be delivered to your studio, and you can try them out for a couple of weeks or whatever to make sure that that's the right decision for you. So, I think that if you're going to spend a couple of grand, these things are important. So, and the final thing is trust your ears and go with your gut and enjoy and have fun. Okay. So that's the kind of end part of the monitoring. Now, let me just check in, see where we're at with questions. Check again. Hang on. What do we got? Okay. Can you see those? Maybe they're too small. I'm not quite sure. I didn't really have a way to kind of make these bigger. So what have we got? Okay, so Guido is saying, is handmade really producing a better result than machine made? I mean, that's a good question. I don't know if I have the capacity to answer that, other than my understanding is that the important thing is that I think the difference with machine made is that if there are errors, where's the quality assurance and things like that? So with testing, and I've seen it because I've gone down to the factory and I can see the way that they move through the creation stage and how when they're testing them to make sure that, you know, human eyes have seen it, and it's also gone through the analyzer for it to pass the test. So, I mean, maybe that's a kind of a rhetorical question. Is handmade better than machine made? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, I guess would be my answer to that. Okay, we've got a few questions more from Jay. Do you feel like certain sizes and models work better with certain genres than other genres, i.e. rock versus EDM and classical versus indie? My answer to that is no, I don't think so. I think because, you know, these days rock music and EDM is, you know, it depends if you're doing rock music that is really interested in bass frequencies or not, because a lot of rock music I hear today has got really, really thunderous kick drums. So if you're doing rock music that's like from, I mean, even 90s rock music is pretty bass heavy, maybe not, you know, as much today, but I think that it is more to do with your personal style. I mean, certainly classical, but even classical music. Have you heard some of the classical music that's being recorded today? Even if you think of like Johnny Greenwood's new classical music label, there's so much more bass resonance and bass fidelity that's being brought into classical music recordings. I personally love that because I'm really into bass and I also love classical music. So I really enjoy that. So yeah, I think it's, again, I wouldn't say it's a genre-based thing personally. I'd be interested for other people's opinion, so let us know in the chat if you agree with me or not. Okay, I'm going to check out where's the other YouTube one? Oh, wow, cool. Lots of questions. Yay, guys. Thank you for all your participation here. Okay. Now, hang on a second. More questions. Juniper is asking about monitor placement. I'm going to get to that in just a second. Dennis asked a question about SonarWorks, and nice that you asked that. I'm going to talk about that as well. And okay, so we've got a bunch of questions about room acoustics, so I'm going to dive into that because I've taken too long as always. So let's go back to my back to the slideshow. Okay. Right, so some simple guidance for positioning speakers in your room. Now, I know this is a question that someone has already asked, so whoever asked that question, here's the answer. Where should the listening position be? So make sure that you play along the long side of the room. So that means that your speakers should be set up on the short side, and then the audio spray is going to spray down the long side of the room. Hopefully that makes it clear, but you can see it also in this picture that the long side of the room is what we want. Okay, so positioning, where should the listening position? That's what we're going to start with. So this is now, I'm giving you ideal situations. You have an empty room and you're going to set it up. I know that some people have room restrictions and they have other stuff going on, okay? So you can always make adjustments, but this is the ideal situation. Okay, so we want to position the listening position at about the 38% of the room. Now, the reason that we don't do this with even numbers is because when you get the even ratios, you get problems with nodes or standing waves and things like that. Okay, so that's the reason for it. And I've written here, you want to avoid 25% of the room and 50% of the room because you get this symmetry, and then this is where we get resonance. Okay. So yes, 38% of the length of the room is where the listening position is. Now, the other thing just to say is, remember, this is the big thing for me, is use the science and the guidelines and everything, but listen, open your ears, and then you have your speakers and listen to where it sounds good. Where does it feel good? You're going to be sitting in that position. So set it up where it just, and again, trust your gut. Your gut will know, okay, where that feels good. All right. So the next thing is, how far should the monitors be away from the listening position? So if you're doing near field, they should be about 1 meter, no more than 2 meters. And if you're going to be doing, far field, I should have said midfield, then they're going to be about 2 meters away. Okay, so now why is that important. So with midfield monitors, they're larger. They, often midfield monitors have 3 drivers. And if you're going to be really close to those drivers, your ear is going to be zoned in on one or more of the drivers, right? So if you're a meter away from it, I'm just looking at the S3V here, that you can't see, it's just out of frame, is that where, if they're too close, I'm going to be hearing a dominance of that driver. So when I'm 2 meters back, the positioning, and this is also to do, you should read about the waveguides. The waveguides is the molding and the finishing on the near the cones that helps, which disperses the sound. So the waveguides are going to spray the audio, and so the idea is that after 2 meters, that the audio, the trajectory is that they unify, right? That's the idea about it. So if you're using a midfield monitor too close, it's not going to be good. And conversely, if you're using a near field monitor too far away, you're going to have problems with, you're going to lose detail. Okay, so that's the simple way to explain it. Now, the speakers in relation to the listening position, the important thing, which a lot of people understand this, is that you're looking for an equilateral triangle. You want to create kind of the phantom center and then 30 degrees either side. Okay, so just a summary of that. You want an equal distance and equal angle from the listening position of the monitors. Now, the speakers need to face towards the listening position, and you do this by focusing the tweeter. Now, some people say, should you base it on the tweeter or the cone? And you can argue about this. I personally think that it needs to be the tweeter, because now, what's the reason for this? High frequencies are more directional. So a low frequency, the woofer is going to be, least detailed than the tweeter. So I want the tweeter be in the optimum position, and the woofer is less directional. So here, so the speaker, you want it to be ear height. So I want the tweeter to be around about ear height, maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit to eye height. Again, listen, all right? Listen for yourself. Now, how high should the actual speakers be? Between 120 and 140 centimeters. I mean, again, it's based on how high you sit and how big you are, I guess. Cool. So thinking also about, when you're thinking, this is just a little note, when you're walking around your room and you're setting your room up, be aware of the bass null. For those of you who are doing EDM and techno and whatever, you need to walk around and really get a sense of the bass response in your room. And make sure, you can see this little drawing here, that you don't put the listening position where you have a dead spot or a resonant spot, right? You've got to think about that. And obviously, when you're doing this, if you're finding big resonances, you would be thinking about using bass traps. Okay. The next thing to think about, and I will talk a little bit more about acoustic treatment in a second. So the other thing to think about when we're thinking about our monitor positioning is speaker boundary interference. Now, this one can be a little bit of a this is like a lot. It gets a bit confusing here. So I want to try and keep it a little bit simple, because oftentimes people do everything right. They put in, they set everything up like I've said. They put in traps and absorbers and diffusers and stuff like that, and they still have problem. And then often, if you still have problems at this stage, it's because of this phenomenon, which is called speaker boundary interference. So let me show you a picture. Basically, it's the bass frequency that goes behind the speaker, because remember, low frequencies are omnidirectional, or sub-frequencies are omnidirectional. So it goes back to the wall, bounces off. And in the way that it bounces off, based on the frequency and the size of the wave, that it sometimes just happens that it either amplifies that frequency or it cancels it. Okay, so in this case, the important thing to do, now this is, again, you can really get really heady about this, but I really, at this point, move your speaker forward a few centimeters. Okay, so just do tiny little adjustments, because what you're trying to do is to disrupt that symmetry. Okay, and now at this point of the game, when you've done all these, you've set everything up, it now becomes little adjustments, have a listen. Do your frequency analysis, little adjustment, have a listen. Okay, so it's not, you do have to interact, and it is a bit of trial and error. And I've seen acousticians setting up rooms, and they do exactly the same thing. They take a measurement, they move it a bit, they come back, they listen, they take another measurement. Okay, so you can do that. What else to say? Oh yeah, one other thing to say here. Now, I've taken this, I can't remember where I took it from, but you can look online. You can, if you want to get a better idea about what the likely wall bounce would be, there are these wall bounce calculators online, and you can plug in your all of the measurements of your room, and you can get an idea about where the likely problems are. Okay, so check those out online. It's called a wall bounce calendar. Find it out for yourself. Excuse me. Okay. Now, adjustments with EQ. Now, I'm actually just going to keep on going right into the end, and then I'll come back and I'll answer the questions that I haven't looked at. Okay, so adjustments with EQ. Now, I probably actually should talk about this at the end because I forgot to talk about treatment first. So I'm going to come back to adjustments with EQ at the end, and I'll give you a good reason for why in a minute. So simple acoustic treatment. Right, once you've set your listening position, you know it's a sweet spot, you know you're happy with it. You've set your monitors in the ideal position. You take a measurement and you get a sense about what's the problems in the room, okay? So you likely would have some problems with bass. So then you would use bass trapping. Now, I think I've said here, the first important thing is to decouple your speakers. So that's really easy. Get some foam, some rubber, make sure that the speakers don't resonate down the speaker stand or whatever. 1. 2 is to apply some acoustic treatment on the first reflection path. Now, the first reflection path, you can see on this diagram here, the first reflection path is the first point. So we get the direct sound, and then we get the first reflection off all of the walls, all of the surfaces in the room. Okay, so we want to control the first reflection path. So from the listening position, it's either side of you, then it's above your head, it's on the floor, it's in front of your eyes, and it's behind your head. Okay, so these are the places that we want to use acoustic treatment for. Now, where you're going to go down this path is, you can really spend a lot of money or a little money. I've shown you a few. Here is an example of some cheap acoustic treatment that you can use. And the idea is that we want to have things that are going to disrupt the reflection. So you can see things that are ridged or have different kinds of surfaces. They're called diffusers. So what they're going to do is send the audio stream off in a different direction. So you're not getting that bounce back, which creates things like flutter effects and whatnot. Okay, and comb filtering, which is what we don't want to happen. You can, make your own diffusers, all this kind of stuff. Okay, so these are the diffusers that are going to be in our first reflection path. Oh, sorry, I've gone the wrong way. Then we have the third thing is for having bass traps. So I recommend bass traps in the corners of your room. The corners are going to disrupt the resonance points. Of course, we have bass. When bass resonates around a corner, it takes on the volume of the resonant body. Okay, so you can research about that, but we want to make sure that we get the corners sorted out. And you can also you might want to use what's called clouds or floating trapping above your head. So and again, you can look online, you can make the bass traps yourself if you're a handicraft kind of person, or there are many different companies that are offering, these days, quite low cost trapping options, and you can go all the way high end. You can tune the traps. If you find out the specific frequencies, you can really get into that. But if you're not at that advanced stage, I would imagine for what I'm talking about today, people are just getting started. I would recommend corner trapping, first reflection path, decouple your speakers, see how you're going. If you still have problems, a few more bass traps, maybe some clouds. If you're still having problems, maybe it's time to call for advice. But I really believe that these simple tips is really going to help you a lot. The final thing to say, what did I want to say? Oh yes, I knew there was something I forgot. EQ. Okay, so EQ is a really important one. Okay, now I left it to the end because it should be the last thing that you do. Okay. Now, something that I find with setting up your monitors in your room, when I tell people all this information, it doesn't cost that much money, but what it does take is time and effort, right? The effort to do the reflection path and analyze everything and take a while to move your speakers inch by inch. It's a pain in the ass, I'll tell you. Like, you have to take some time for it. And a lot of people can't be bothered, right? So that's why they call someone else, right? So I think the thing is, it's not necessarily that hard, but it does require you to block out a day and take some time and be patient and experiment with these things. There is trial and error that's going to happen. So yes, okay. So people want, now the reason I say that is that people want EQ to be like a quick fix, and it's just not that, okay? EQ is absolutely a part of the whole package of tuning a room, but it happens when you've done everything that I've already talked about, right? So it should be reserved for the end, and it's really only for fine tuning. So for an example, if you don't, okay, if we're talking about speaker boundary interference, if you just use EQ, so let's say that you have a problem that 200 hertz drops out, right? And then you use room EQ to boost 200 hertz. All you've done, you've boosted 200 hertz, which is going to beam off the back wall and come back again, and you're just amplifying the problem. It's not going to solve that problem, okay? So understanding little adjustments that you can make, yes, but it can't solve big problems like massive cancellation. It's not going to help you, okay? So the better way to do is to move your speakers a bit, and magically the frequencies will start to appear. It's quite amazing, actually, when you start to experiment with it. Okay, the other really important thing to understand about using EQ is when you equalize, you're applying filtering. And what filtering does, part of the byproduct of filtering is that it introduces subtle phasing, phase shift, right? So it's minute. It's not anything that's audible necessarily in terms of like phase that we expect if we're doing creative phasing or whatever. But what it does do is that the phasing results in a reduced clarity. So the more adjustments you do with EQ, you're going to reduce the clarity in the frequency band that you're filtering with EQ. Okay, so you've got to keep that in mind. It's again, when you start to tune into it, you'll notice that. So again, remember when I said at the beginning is that there's no perfect solution. It is a trade-off, and it's a balancing act that you need to do. Okay. So my tips for using EQ: 1, do it at the end. 2, make sure you're using a high quality EQ. So with the Adam S series, we have very high quality. Now, the important thing is it has to be linear phase, okay? So we're having minimal phase implications as possible. So as I said, use the inbuilt speaker EQ when possible. The important thing is if you're going to be using it like SonarWorks, or maybe you're going to do it in your chain, it's important that you do it in the right place, okay? So it has to be, so SonarWorks, for example, right, if you're listening to references and you're mixing, if you put your adjustment EQ in your DAW and you listen to music from Spotify, that's not going to help you, okay? So you just need to be mindful of where it is in your signal chain so that everything you're listening to is adjusted correctly if you're going to be checking with references and stuff like that. As I said, be aware of the phasing and time issues and try and hear that so you understand the trade-off that's happening. And then, of course, be gentle with the adjustments. Small changes, check it. Another small change, check it. Don't just like carve out a lot or boost a lot at once. Bad idea. The final thing here is I would only make changes based on really specific readings after you're doing room measurements. Like you can use Room EQ Wizard or SonarWorks or whatever, okay? So don't just trust your ears. Use the frequency analyzer to see where you can see there's a big boost or a real null. Go in and tune it, and then do the measurement again and see if it's improved, okay? As well as listening to your ears. Okay, whew. So I think that's all I have for you today. Oh yeah, one final thing. I'm an academic. I'm a geek. I like to read. This book is been really useful for me. I think it's a great one. So please check it out if you're interested to learn more about this stuff. Yeah, and that's it. Thank you everyone for listening. Now I'm going to go into the chat and see where we are. Hopefully I've still got everyone on the line. All right, give me a sec. Let's check it out. Wonder if I can make this bigger. Oh yeah, I can. Cool. Is that better for everyone to see? Okay. Okay, so I've answered questions about the tweeters. SonarWorks. So hopefully, Dennis, I've answered your question about SonarWorks. Yes, SonarWorks is great as you know, when it's used carefully. What acoustic treatment have I got myself in my room is from All You Need Is Ears. I have the acoustic treatment in my room has been set up for me by an acoustician, a friend who came in and did an analysis, and I have curtains on one side. This is not my studio, by the way. I'm at Adam HQ. But in my studio, I have big windows. So I have special sound curtains on the right-hand side. I have a movable kind of baffle for my reflection path on the left-hand side, because I use my studio for mixing and sometimes I'm also producing in it. So I don't always want that to be, sometimes I don't care about it. I have floats in this. I have 6 clouds or floating traps, and I have bass trapping in the ceiling because it's a kind of a false ceiling. So I have traps actually in the ceiling. Yes, that's it, I think. I have bass traps behind my speakers as well to absorb, to help me with the SBI. Yeah, I hope that answered your question. Okay, Arno says, is having a high ceiling better for acoustics? That's a good question. Now, this is where my kind of detailed knowledge is going to be limited. There are minimum kind of requirement. If you're going to be mixing, there are minimum kind of desirable heights of your ceiling. And I know this because I was looking for a room a couple of years ago, and a lot of the basements in Berlin, the ceilings are too low to have a good mixing room. So yes, high ceilings are definitely better for acoustics, within reason though, right? Because if they get too high, then you start to get a lot of this kind of movement of the frequency bouncing around above your head. So in that case, when you have the thing of it is though, a high ceiling is better because then you can always bring it down. You can introduce a false ceiling, you can use the clouds or whatever. Whereas if you've got a low ceiling, you can't push it up. That's all you've got. So yeah, a higher ceiling is better, definitely. So Giuseppe is saying, Jane, do you think that it is better to have good headphones if it's not possible to adjust the room or have monitors at all? This is a really good question, Giuseppe. Thanks for this one. I think it's a really important thing to talk about, because these days, so many more people are doing producing, and we can't necessarily, sometimes people have problems with bass. I used to get in so much trouble with my neighbors because I'd always be having really loud bass. So of course, sometimes I had to work in monitors. People have flatmates, they live with their parents, whatever it might be, or they just can't afford good monitors, or they don't have a room. So I think that if this is if you fall into that category, I think investing in high quality, sorry, I just saw a question come through there. If you're investing in high quality headphones is a really, really smart decision. The other thing is that, I travel a lot. Lots of people travel these days. Well, not at the moment, but, and so I do actually do quite a lot of work when I'm in transit in headphones. So I want to have good quality headphones. So here's a little plug for Adam. Here's the Adam HP5s. These are really, really great. What you would expect from Adam, the really the quality and detail in the high frequency range you get with these monitors. So yes, the answer to this is yes. I think investing in a good quality pair of headphones is advisable if you really can't get your room in some kind of shape. Yep. Okay, so Victor Muka says, some acousticians say that side symmetry is essential, and if I cannot have that, I should not even start treating anything. What's your take on that? Okay, so look, I'm not an acoustician, I don't know, but from my experience, that, you know, this is the thing. If it's always better to do something, if you have to work in that room and you want to make music in that room, it's always, you can always do things to improve it. It might not be perfect, you might still have problems with it, but I think that there are aspects that you can improve. So I'm not one to say, unless it's perfect, don't bother. I think that there's lots of things that you can do to enhance it. You know, so what are they saying? Like, don't bother producing. If you can't have the perfect room, you can't fix that room, don't produce in that room. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that there's a lot that you can do to make your experience better. I want to say one other thing that someone asked me one time is, what happens if, so what's the problem with working in a room that isn't treated? Or what's the problem with working with cheap monitors or monitors that don't work very well? I think that's a really good question. And the answer is this, because I also have come up through the ranks and I've worked in really shitty rooms and I've used bad monitors. And I now work in very good rooms and I work with very good monitors. And I can tell you the answer is this, is that it is much, much easier. It doesn't mean that you can't work in a bad room. But the thing is that it's torturous to work in a bad room. You are constantly second guessing yourself. You don't have confidence. So this is the point of today's discussion, is to give you power, to give you confidence to know that when you're mixing and when you're producing and when you're doing those EQ changes or, you know, balancing the sounds in your mix, that when you go out and you play it in your car or you play it in your AirPods or whatever, that it sounds pretty similar to what you're hearing in your room, right? So, and if it doesn't sound the same, then you've got to come back again into this room that you don't know what's going on. And, you know, so that to me is the thing, is that you can work in rooms that are less than perfect, but you work a lot harder and you have to come back and forth a lot. Getting some acoustic treatment, really thinking a little bit about this stuff makes your mixing job easier. You feel more confident, you do better work, you get paid to mix, you make money, you invest in better studio equipment, right? So on it goes. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Okay, let's see a few other questions. Have I got anything that I've missed? If I've missed your question, please feel free to throw it in there. We've got to finish the stream in a couple of minutes. So I'm going to finish at 15:15. So now is your chance for questions. I'm just going to check out Facebook. What do we got? Okay, Rudy brings out a cool question here. What is the goal of audio adjusting? No one has the same hearing. So what is your ideal sound? Great question. So yes, it is based on your ears. Okay, so first of all, it's got to sound good to you. And this is when I'm doing acoustic treatment, I'm listening to my mix references. Okay, so I've heard these mix references in rooms that I trust. I understand, I've used them for years and years when I'm mixing. And when I'm setting my room up, I want to know, I'm wanting to get them to a point that sounds the same as I remember them, basically. Okay, so for example, okay, so I'm listening to one of my tracks and I feel like I go, oh, it seems as though the high frequencies are a bit too active. Then I do my frequency analysis and then I see, oh yeah, there's a lot of energy up in that high frequency range. Then I move things around, or I set up my diffusers, or I move my speakers or whatever. I do my analysis again. Okay, it seems like it's lowered. I listen to it. I think if I agree. That's the process that I go around doing it. So yeah, at the end of the day, and I was in a room doing a setup with an acoustician and they set it up and then I came in and listened to it and I wasn't happy with it. And that was the thing, is that at the end of the day, it's my room, so I needed to be happy with it. So then we worked together to get it to a point that I was happy with. And that's it. Okay, so there's no perfect definition of what a room should sound like. Okay. Emmanuel's saying he came later, and will the video be saved so you can watch it later? I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to say yes, but you'll have to check out the Bax website and check out them to see what they say. Okay, Okay, so Jay says, do you still need to pay as much attention to the distance from the wall if you are using front ported monitors? Yes, you do need to, because the sound, I mean, of course, the porting is more to do with air pressure than audio frequency, if that makes sense. Okay, so it's the movement that's created from the cone that is being released. So it's not necessarily like you're getting the bass frequency. In fact, the ports should be silent. If you get port noise, that's a bad thing. Okay, so the actual bass frequency moves in an omnidirectional character from the front and from the back as well. Okay. Oh, sorry. Oh, great. I'm glad that was a good answer for you, Rudy. Nice one. Okay, so John is saying monitors on stands, or put them on your desk. Monitors on stands for me, because the desk becomes a resonant body. So the stands, you'll have, it's going to resonate off the desk. If you have to use a desk, use a decouple. Make sure you decouple them. The other thing about the desk is that it's too low. So then you need to tilt the monitors up, and then you can start to get some problems with like the phasing, relation to your, okay. So the thing, if you tilt the monitors, in the tilt, when you move your head, you get less of less of the sweet spot, let's say, right? I saw this thing the other day that had a little kind of a desk stand. I think that's probably a good compromise. If you don't have a lot of space and you don't want to have the stands behind, I would get a desk stand, and I think that's probably the best solution. Okay. Have I answered all the questions? So Tommaso Leschio, hey mate, is saying, what do you think about Sonarworks reference? I like Sonarworks. I think they're cool. I think it's a cool company. Excuse me. Yes, great. Go for it. I think the benefit of Sonarworks is that it goes through and it does the analysis for you. So that's the big selling point for Sonarworks for me, because it's taking the guesswork out of it. It's going to tell you, based on you go through, who uses Sonarworks, by the way? Does anyone use it? So you set your microphone and it beeps things out and it does the analysis. You've got to move it all the way around the room. And once it's done that, it will give you its kind of analysis, and also it will give you the EQ curve that it recommends for the room. So if you don't use Sonarworks, can you use any EQ? We can't use any EQ, but if you use a high quality linear phase EQ, you can set it up yourself, but you need to use Room EQ Wizard or something else like this, or use a frequency. You have to make all the decision for the analysis of the room yourself. Okay, so that's the benefit for Sonarworks, in my opinion. Alex says frequencies even out at 85 dB, but that's too loud to work in for long periods. How loud do you work? How to not favor frequencies at lower levels? That's a super question. I actually do work at 85 dB. I like things kind of loud. The thing is, I'm really careful to work only for no more than 2 hours at 85 dB. So I'm changing my levels quite a lot. So if I'm doing something, I'm only going to set it at 85 dB if I'm doing a specific thing. Often with like drums and bass, I like to have it at that kind of frequency where I can really zone in. I can also feel it. But once I've got that set, if I'm then going to be doing things like balancing vocals and backing vocals, I'm going to edge off the frequency, because the loudness, the SPL, because I'm going to be zoning in on high frequencies, and I'm going to turn it down for that. Also, so I move it around throughout the mix, and being really mindful of the level that you have is super important. I'm getting older, and I don't know how the age of all of you out there, but I can tell you, when you get older, you start to have the unfortunate side effects of ear damage, and it's no fun. Okay, so definitely take care of your ears. So how do you measure your SPL when you're working? Yeah, I use an iPhone app, and I also have an SPL meter that I have, but I just use the iPhone app. That's enough for me. Yeah. What else have we got? Brendan says, why is it a no-no to have monitors stretched across a corner? I mean, I think just in terms of the reality of the corner is bass resonances. That would be my first answer there. If you go back over, we're talking about the listening position, and the ideal listening position is the corner of the room is not the best place to go. Yeah. Okay. Oh, there's one here from Ollie. What is your opinion on foam panels versus more heavy-duty fiberglass insulation panels like the ones behind you? I think that the foam panels are okay when you start out, and when you get a bit more serious, I think that I would advise, things like Hoffer Acoustic do really good stuff, and there's a few companies. There's a really great company in Berlin that's doing really competitive bass traps, made-to-measure bass traps. I think it's called, I'm not quite sure what it's called, but they're great. So check them out if anyone's in Berlin. I think they ship into Europe. But I think, as you know, again, it depends. Go back to that first question about like what stage are you at in your career? If you're starting out, foam panels is a really good start, and you'll really notice the benefit of getting those first reflections with foam panels. That's how I started. As you develop, you might want to be able to like hone in and control things a little bit more. Then you start to, invest in a more bespoke kind of answer for your, for the diffusers and stuff that you're going to use. So that's my answer to that one. Hopefully that's okay. Okay, a few more questions. So I think I've answered all these. If I've missed any questions, I don't know, at me at Adam Audio. My email, maybe I'll put it up again for you to check out. And there's my email. So we're going to end this broadcast now. Thank you everyone so much for all of your amazing questions. I really appreciate them coming in, and it makes me feel good for the vibes. Looking at this little green dot can feel a bit lonely at times. But thank you so much for all of your participation. I hope that today was really informative for you, and that you feel empowered to get the monitors that are right for you, and to really just spend some time in your room to optimize it so that you feel good. And happy mixing, happy making music to you all. See you later, everyone.